Welcome back to TangibleTalks Podcast. Today we continue our discussion of Daniel in our biblical character series. We will cover Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the tree, the handwriting on the wall, and Daniel in the lion's den.
Each of these individual accounts show the working of God and His plans for creation. These plans can be revealed either through dreams, visions, or times of trial. Daniel is called upon to give hard truths to two different kings.
Daniel faces persecution but does not give into the demands of the people who seek not only his life but to silence his prayers. Join us today as we continue our discussion on Daniel Part 2 in our biblical character series on TangibleTalks Podcast.
Hi, Jana.
Hey, Rita. Hey, listeners. Man, Rita's going to clean this up, but I fumbled over the intro quite a bit. I am a little tongue-tied this morning. This is a part 2 of a 3-part series, and we covered Daniel 1 through 3 last time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 through 3.
That's right. I thought it was really cool about the writing on the wall. You know, that is a term or a saying that's said in our society all of the time. And I did not know where that came from.
Yeah.
But it clearly comes from the king seeing the writing on the wall. And I didn't know that. If I've studied that before, if I've heard that in a Bible story form, I didn't remember that one. I obviously remember the lion's den. That's the one that really stuck out to me when we were going to talk about Daniel. But that was cool.
In all honesty, we could take each of these chapters and do an entire series on that. I think the purpose of the biblical character series is to look at the character, at the things that happen that are around them, but how they handle that situation. And so that's why I think we can just cover the 3 chapters at one time, but they do deserve a deep dive into each one of them. What we're going to cover with Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the tree and the handwriting on the wall are 2 stories that are basically the same. They're the same in that God is dealing with the heart and pride of 2 different rulers, and the outcome of God dealing with their pride, their mockery, is different. How it plays out, what Nebuchadnezzar chooses to do, and what is it Belshazzar?
Mm-hmm.
Belshazzar chooses to do. 2 different choices. And I think if even before we dive into this, I think our takeaway is God will deal with us individually about things in our lives, and the outcome depends upon our choice in what we're going to do with it.
Mm.
So I think that's where we can start today's recording.
Okay.
We've mentioned a few times now in our series about dreams and visions. And it started with Jacob, and he had the dream of the ladder. Then we had Joseph, and we had in chapter 2 of Daniel having the vision. He actually had the vision. The king had it, but he wanted someone to tell him what it was and the interpretation. We have Nebuchadnezzar has had another dream, and he calls Daniel in, and he says, "Will you reveal to me what this means?" So Daniel reveals the dream about a tree. Daniel gives the meaning of it.
And boy, he doesn't shy away from the meaning. He tells it like it is.
He tells it exactly like it is. I don't think it was rude. I think
I don't either. I think I found it more admirable, and like, man, that takes a lot of stones to do that, because this is, I mean, he's talking to the king, you know?
So Nebuchadnezzar has the dream. He tells Daniel, and this is all written down. You can read this. This is a similar dream in that it's symbolic, And so now we have the similar dream, only this time it is personal. This is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar himself and not kingdoms. His pride will cost him his mind for 7 years, his pride. Only when he acknowledges God does he return to his right mind and is his kingdom restored. So Daniel reveals, and like you said, this had to have been tough. Daniel reveals the tree in the dream is Nebuchadnezzar. So this dream is a warning of coming testing, a judgment of Nebuchadnezzar. And Daniel has the wisdom and knowledge that he sees this. This is dealing with Nebuchadnezzar himself. And it's like you warn a friend. You need to give a warning because Daniel can sense in this from the content of the dream that this king's pride is going to cause him to live like an animal for 7 years. And then Daniel even says, after he tells him what all of this means, he says, don't do it. Don't give in to your pride.
Yeah. But he inevitably did.
But he did. And in Daniel chapter 4:29, after 12 months, he happened to be walking around on the battlements of the royal palace of Babylon. I just want to take a moment here and point out that this king is walking around his royal palace, kind of like a rooftop, and looking out over his kingdom. Who does this remind us of? Remember when David went out on his rooftop and he saw Bathsheba? I'm just pointing this because the Bible uses this language and it wants you to connect the dots. So if you remember what happened to David when he failed, the beginning of it was he saw Bathsheba. Then he took her, then he had the husband killed, etc., etc. So here we have, he happened to be walking around on the battlements of the royal palace of Babylon. This should be a little note to us to say, this isn't going to be good. The king uttered these words. Is this not the great Babylon that I have built for a royal residence by my own mighty strength and for my majestic honor?
There's pride.
There's pride.
There's a lot of pride in that statement. By my own mighty strength.
Mm-hmm. He's walking around and he is puffed up. He is it. We've never acted like that in our life, have we? We've never encountered anyone like that, have we? It seems like it's just a small little question. Is this not what I built? While these words were still on the king's lips, a voice came down from heaven. It is hereby announced to you, King Nebuchadnezzar, that your kingdom has been removed from you. Nebuchadnezzar became proud. Not just in that moment. It was a slow build because pride, it only takes a little bit. And all you have to do is practice the pride. It becomes such a stench. After a while, you really don't want to be around someone who boasts all the time and is very proud. Isn't this great Babylon that I have built for my glory? At that moment, he was cut down. And in the dream, there was a tree, and it was cut down. So now you can see the correlation of a dream. The tree represented Nebuchadnezzar, it represented his life. It was cut down. But also in the dream, it said to leave a stump so that shoots could come back out. So he was cut down but not utterly destroyed, exactly like the tree in the dream. Nebuchadnezzar, for 7 years, behaved like an animal. His hair grew, his nails grew, and then Nebuchadnezzar was given the opportunity. He returned to his right mind, and God restored him.
And again, just as prophecy predicted, right?
Yeah. He was given a warning. He was told a year in advance. I have to be careful because I know that there are times I'm warned about things I even know. Ooh, that's not a good thing to do. And yet, when we're tested, we fail if we're trying to do it in our own power.
You know, I think this is something that a lot of people really struggle with before they come to Christ. Like, I think a lot of people really struggle with the focus of their self-centeredness. Like they are the center of their universe.
Mm.
And they care so much about how they're perceived, their power, their strength, what do other people believe of them? And when you just continue down that path, I know for me, the most miserable I ever was probably when I was the most selfish I ever was.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully once you come to know Jesus and you're born again, you that fixation about yourself is no longer there. You're rooted in Christ.
I think that that's why we have the term born again. We are becoming new creatures. We see the destruction of the old nature and we look for the nature of Christ in our lives.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'd like to read in Daniel 4, starting in verse 26. And this is Daniel's reply to the dream that Nebuchadnezzar has had of the tree, and then the interpretation that God has given him. They said to leave the taproot of the tree, for your kingdom will be restored to you when you come to understand that heaven rules. Well, that's something that all of us can take away, isn't it? To learn that heaven rules.
Mhm. It's a it's a harder lesson maybe than it should be.
Well, yeah, he's going to be an animal for 7 years.
Mm.
Wow. Therefore, O king, may my advice be pleasing to you. Break away from your sin by doing what is right, and from your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps your prosperity will be prolonged. So Daniel throws in this comment, which is very brave to say to someone who obviously has a problem with pride and
Mhm.
arrogance.
And someone who has so much power over what happens to you. I mean, break away from your sins by doing what is right. That's hard. Like, that would be hard for me to say to a best friend, let alone my boss or my boss's boss's boss, you know?
And show mercy to the poor. That's a big old cut too.
Mhm.
That's revealing that he he doesn't think very much of the poor or the people who have very little things. So this is where I feel you can see the heart of Daniel, and he's like, this is going to happen, and the only way this is not going to happen is if there's a change in you. And there wasn't.
Yeah.
And what the dream revealed took place, and Nebuchadnezzar did basically lose his mind. He just became an animal. And at the end of 7 years, he was restored. So we have a king here that God deals with, and then he is restored. And then in Daniel 5, we have another king that God is going to deal with, but his outcome is going to be extremely different from Nebuchadnezzar's.
Mhm.
Let's just go on into Daniel 5.
Okay.
Belshazzar sees mysterious handwriting on the wall. This should be familiar to us. The writing is on the wall.
Oh, when I saw that heading, I was like, "That's where that comes from."
There's a lot of sayings that we have that actually do come from the Bible.
They really do. A lot
Mhm.
of them
But
that I don't think a lot of people know that they do come like, that reference is from the Bible, which is
yeah.
really interesting.
Yes, and so let's see if we can even dive deeper and see the true meaning behind it. Nebuchadnezzar, he dies or he's no longer king. There's another ruler that comes about in the kingdom of Babylon, and his name is King Belshazzar. When Nebuchadnezzar brought the captives from Jerusalem, he also brought items from the temple, the golden items, the items that were used that Solomon made, the things that maybe even went back as far as Moses. And they were brought into the city of Babylon. And so we have this king who's throwing himself a great banquet, and there's thousands of nobles, and they're all drinking wine, and they are all having a very, very good time. Verse 2 says, while under the influence of the wine, Belshazzar issues an order to bring in the gold and silver vessels, the one that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had confiscated from the temple of Jerusalem,
Mm.
so that the king and his nobles, together with their wives and their concubines, could drink from them. Do you see a problem?
Oh, yeah.
Huge problem.
Such a lack of disrespect and
He is not showing
I mean,
respect.
such a lack of respect,
Yeah.
such a display of disrespect.
And it's a mockery.
Mhm.
This goes pretty deep because he's the king. He wants it brought in because he is above the God of Israel. He himself is
Yeah, it goes back to that
it
pride.
goes.
It's so prideful.
And the thing is, Nebuchadnezzar was either his father or his grandfather. I don't know which it is because at that time you could say his father, and it was actually his grandfather. Okay,
Mm.
but he would have known Nebuchadnezzar, and he would have known about the 7 years that took place through the arrogance and pride of his grandfather, and yet he's following in the same path.
Which, I mean, we see that all the time today
Oh yeah.
with people falling into the traps of their predecessors.
But I wanna say that this sounds like we're highlighting the bad, and we probably are. I have seen in some families where they really made an effort and, applied principles, godly principles, kindness, wisdom, and that goes down through the ages too.
Of
I
course.
think Daniel had to have been in that particular group because he had to have learned some things when he was younger to have him where he is now. So,
No,
not
I agree. I just bring that up because some people may think, well, that's hard to believe that somebody would see somebody go through that and then do the same thing. But I mean, I can think of a lot of examples where that's the case.
I can too. I could probably give you many from my life. Many. Okay, so at that very moment, the fingers of a human hand appeared. Now they're drinking wine. This is probably not a typical dinner party. There's probably a lot of stuff going on here, and
Mhm.
a finger of a hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the royal palace wall opposite the lampstand. The king was watching the back of the hand that was writing. Then all the color drained from the king's face, and he became alarmed. The joints of his hips gave way, and his knees began knocking together. This had to have been a terrifying sight.
Oh, yeah.
His hips were knocked out of joint. I mean, you're doing some serious shaking.
Well, I mean, the hand itself is terrifying.
He doesn't have any idea what this means. And so they look for a wise man. And who did they call? They called Daniel. They hear about Daniel, and Daniel comes in. and he's going to interpret the writing on the wall. So Daniel was brought in before the king. The king said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel who is one of the captives of Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard about you." So Daniel's reputation precedes him. How there is a spirit of the gods in you, and how you have insight, discernment, and extraordinary wisdom. Now the wise men and astrologers were brought before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they were unable to disclose the interpretation of the message. However, I have heard that you are able to provide interpretations and to decipher knotty problems. Well, now, that's very interesting. That's a very interesting comment to make about Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
Decipher knotty problems. Not a term we use today.
No, and I don't think that was the term that was used in my text because it stuck out to me, and I didn't remember that phrasing. So that is an interesting term to me. That would signify someone that's very good at solving complex problems.
Mm-hmm. Intertwined. You have to figure out where to start and then how to a process of going through. Now, if you are able to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, you will wear purple and have a golden collar around your neck and be third ruler in the kingdom. Well, this is the second time that Daniel has been propositioned this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The purple and you'll be this and you'll be that. But Daniel replied to the king, "Keep your
Yeah, I love
gifts.
it.
Keep your gifts and give your rewards to someone else."
This is just such wisdom. Like Daniel just knew what was important and what wasn't. And I mean, I still struggle with this today. I still care way too much about worldly things. Daniel didn't have that struggle.
No.
And that was proven in that statement.
And
He didn't care about doing the right thing to gain power and status.
it shows a pure heart, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It stands out so much because I think we don't see this type of person often.
No.
But he says, "However, I will read the writing for the king and make known its interpretation. As for you, O king, the Most High God bestowed on your father Nebuchadnezzar a kingdom, greatness, honor, and majesty. Due to the greatness that he bestowed on him, all peoples, nations, and language groups were trembling with fear before him. He killed whom he wished. He spared whom he wished. He exalted whom he wished, and he brought low whom he wished. And when his mind became arrogant and his spirit filled with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne, and his honor was removed from him. He was driven from human society. His mind was changed to that of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like oxen, and his body became damp with the dew of the sky, until he came to understand that the Most High God rules over human kingdoms, and he appoints over them whomever he wishes." That's quite a review of the history of this king's father.
Mm-hmm.
You can think, what does that have to do with this situation? But it has everything to do with this situation. Because this king now, Belshazzar, is in the exact same place his father was with his arrogance and pride, and thinking that he is above all because he can do whatever he wants to do. But God is the one who sets up authority and leadership, and he's the one that decides how things will go, and it's not us.
Mm-hmm.
But you, his son Belshazzar, have not humbled yourself, although you knew all this. Very interesting statement. Instead, you have exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. You brought before you the vessels from his temple, and you and your nobles, together with your wives and concubines, drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone gods that cannot see or hear or comprehend. But you have not glorified the God who has in his control your very breath and all your ways. Therefore, the palm of a hand was sent from him, and this writing was inscribed. We have explained to us here the weight of this situation. And the king felt that weight of the situation because he trembled. His knees knocked together, his hip was knocked out of place, his color changed. And so now Daniel's going to give the interpretation. This is the writing that was inscribed: Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Pharsin. This is the interpretation of the words. As for Mene, God has numbered your kingdom's days and brought it to an end. As for Tekel, you are weighed on the balances and found to be lacking. As for Pharsin, your kingdom is divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Then on Belshazzar's order, Daniel was clothed in purple. A golden collar was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed third ruler in the kingdom. And in that very night, Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, was killed. So Darius the Mede took control of the kingdom when he was about 62 years old. And there's the writing on the wall and the interpretation of it.
Heavy, like it didn't leave anything to interpretation. It pretty much told you how it was, or the interpretation did.
And it was just 4 words, was it not?
Mm-hmm. I really found the part, you are weighed on the balances and found to be lacking. Chilling.
The depth and the weight of that. You are weighed on the balances and found to be lacking.
I never want to hear those words. I want to hear, you have done well, my good and faithful servant.
Yes.
And so we really have to think about our actions and what are we doing. This goes back to our listener question somewhat, like we don't gain salvation through our deeds, but they are judged and looked at.
Yes. We are held responsible for our actions, but
Yes.
Salvation is a separate thing.
Yes. That is a gift.
It is a gift from the giver of life. And so we have 2 stories of 2 rulers that God dealt with because he allowed them to be in a position to rule over the people and establish a government. And they were tyrants.
And they rejected God. And I think this is somewhat a pattern from Saul too, in our study of David. Like you saw that same. Like this is a very common issue with kings.
Which is why I think at the beginning of this story, we had the image, the dream of an image of a man. The head was gold, and then you had the different.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is showing in an image form that mankind's never going to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be brought down. And the Rock of Ages, Jesus, is the only one who will be able to rule, and to rule in justice, and to be a good king. I think that we see some kings get it right, but it hasn't been consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're going to go into Daniel in the lion's den.
Yeah, and this is probably the most famous Daniel story. I know this is the one that I really knew coming into the study. This is actually JoJo, one of her favorite Bible stories. She loves Daniel and the Lion's Den.
Mm. Did you see anything new in this when you read it this last time?
I did. I highlighted a couple of verses. I think maybe we should go into it first
Okay.
before I talk about that. But for this specific portion, but with the study of Daniel, I mean, I saw so many things. I guess one of the biggest revelations was the writing on the wall. I did not know that was in Daniel.
Hmm.
No idea.
Okay.
I didn't
Well,
remember that at all.
So we have a new king. We have one that's the Medes and Persians. And this is going to be, if you're looking at that image, it's going to be the breast. And so Darius is the king. And he appointed 120 satraps. And I'm guessing this is like government representatives, high-placed officials, who would be in charge of the entire kingdom. Over them would be 3 supervisors, one of whom was Daniel. So we already have Daniel in a high position in a different government, in a different kingdom, which is unheard of. These satraps were accountable to these 3 so that the king's interest might not incur damage. Okay? So they were just to make sure that everything was flowing good. I mean, it's just very obvious that Daniel's different. Everybody's going to see that he's different. And this is going to become a problem. These new leaders do not like Daniel. And the only reason that they would have that they don't like Daniel is because they're corrupt and they want to do things that aren't wise, and Daniel's not going to allow that. So they come up with a trap for Daniel. And the only thing that they can come up with that could be damaging for him is that he prays to God. And so they write a decree that will be enforced, that no one, for the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any other god or human other than the king should be thrown into a den of lions.
And these were a couple of my takeaways from this portion. So one, the satraps I say satraps, I don't know how exactly it's pronounced. They remind me of the Pharisees in this way. You know how the verse says they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. The Pharisees really couldn't find that with Jesus. So they had to scheme and do all these things to get him to basically trap him. But my takeaway from this portion is that, man, what a way to live where your enemies can't find fault in you. And I think that's very powerful, and that's something that we should all somewhat strive for. And I know I don't remember if it was my mom or where I heard this from. It possibly was mom. But in high school, you know, we all experience a lot of cattiness and some jealousy and all kinds of things like that. And I just remember someone telling me, you know, live in a way that when people hear those things, they know they aren't true. So when people say bad things about you, they know by your actions and the way that you live that that's not true. And what great advice.
Great advice. Excellent advice. These guys get together and they come up with a plan and they go in and they talk the king into it. Now, I'm suspicious of this king already because he's okay with, for the next 30 days, no one prays to anyone but him. So we're repeating that pride thing again, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
And so they talk him into doing a written document, and he seals it, and it cannot be changed. So in Daniel 6:10, when Daniel realized that a written decree had been issued, he entered his home where the windows in his upper room opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times daily he was kneeling and offering prayers and thanks to his God, just as he had been accustomed to doing previously. Then those officials who had gone to the king came by collusion and found Daniel praying and asking for help from his God. So they approached the king and said to him, "Did you not issue an edict?" And, we go through there, this Daniel, he's praying, blah, blah, blah. And when the king hears this, he was very upset and began thinking about how he might rescue Daniel.
This brings me to my next biggest takeaway that I had not seen necessarily the times before, or just like learning the Bible story as when I was younger. I liked the fact that Daniel learned of the decree. He knew it had been published. He didn't care. He prayed anyways. He did not let something that he knew was unjust and that he knew wasn't right impact his behavior. He kept going on with his behavior anyways, and in fact, it even says that he asked God for help.
Yes.
Man, I want to do that too. When I am in situations where I am somewhat forced to compromise in my beliefs, I don't want to bow down to that temptation or the fear. I want to lean on God. So the last thing was, I didn't remember that the king wanted to help Daniel.
That's what I wanted to point out. He begins thinking about it.
Yeah.
About how he can rescue
I didn't
Daniel.
remember
The
that.
thing is, it says, "Recall, O king, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no edict or decree that the king issues can be changed." So now he realizes that he can't help Daniel.
Mm.
I think Daniel knew this already. I don't think Daniel looked to the king,
No.
to this person, to be his salvation. He looked to the King of Kings to be his salvation. This is sometimes, I think, where we look to other people, or we think, oh, if I have a large savings account, or if I do this or I do that, then it's going to save me. And when it gets down to it, it really is only God that can save us from all things. And he is quite capable of doing it. So then the king realizes that he cannot save Daniel, and he has him thrown into a den of lions. So the king gave the order, and Daniel was brought and thrown into a den of lions. The king consoled Daniel by saying, "Your God, whom you continually serve, will rescue you." And the king is correct on that one. Then a stone was brought and placed over the opening of the den. The king sealed it with his signet ring and with those of his nobles, so that nothing could be changed with regard to Daniel. Then the king departed to his palace, but he spent the night without eating, and no diversions were brought to him. He was unable to sleep. And so Daniel goes into the den. A stone is rolled over the top of him, and nothing can be done as far as we can see. There's so many lessons to take away from this. There's the betrayal, the scheming, the uncovering of it. And Daniel just seems to go about his life in the same way as he normally does. He did not change. He didn't waver. And that had to be because of his unshakable faith. I don't think I have that rock solid faith.
Oh, I mean, I know that I don't. It's something, and it's not something that I do really think it's a practice, right? Like Daniel, he isn't the way that he is because he just believes. He believes because he has a relationship. I mean, he talks to God a lot. And I just think that that's the piece that it is so important. Like we have to go to God with our prayer and on a daily basis. Like, it needs to be something that we are continually pouring into, um, to have that, to be able to stand in those moments. And because when you are basically just what you practice and what you repeatedly do. So Daniel is the way he is because that's the way he always was. Like, he wasn't just that way in this moment. He was that way every day, even in the hard moments.
And we see it when we're first introduced to Daniel, when he refused to partake of the delicacies of the kingdom.
Yeah, and I just think of there's so many applicable things to Daniel in our lives. I think about as a parent, I'm faced with these moments to live differently than some other families who, are around in our circle and at our school. Um, sometimes you do have to make hard decisions that other people aren't doing, like maybe not letting somebody sleep over or not letting them watch, K-pop Demon Hunters or whatever it is, because you want to live differently. And I think we are called to do that. We're called to be that way.
And I think that that's the importance of Daniel and his life in Scripture, to be an example and to encourage
Yeah, and
us.
not to cave into society. Just because everybody
Mm.
else is doing this and it seems okay, if it goes against what you believe in, or if there's something about it that goes against what you believe in, you don't have to partake in it. You can say, no, we're not going to do that. And this is why. And let that be that. Don't feel ashamed about it.
So in the morning, at the first sign of daylight, the king got up and rushed to the lion's den. He approached the den and he called out to Daniel in a worried voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you continually serve able to rescue you from the lions?" Then Daniel spoke to the king, "O king, live forever." Would you have been able to do that? "O king, live forever." Because, I know me, and I would go, "Listen here, what were you thinking when you did that? What were you doing listening to those yahoos when they came to you? What did you hope would be solved during these 30 days that no one prays to you? Look at what it did." But Daniel didn't do that. He kept his eye on the order of
Mm-hmm.
things. God is the ultimate king, and he gives us respect, but God has placed this person in charge. And Daniel is a counselor to him, and Daniel is to show wisdom and to depart knowledge. Then Daniel spoke, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and closed the lion's mouth so that they have not harmed me, because I was found to be innocent before him, nor have I done any harm to you, O king." Daniel says this, and he's still in the lion's den.
I think this is important too because once again, he gives the glory back to God. He didn't really say, like, oh, because of my righteous acts and da 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 da. Like, it always goes back to God, which is something the kings didn't do.
No,
And they continued to fail over and over at.
Daniel made it through, and the lions did not attack. They had the ability to attack, but that ability was
Yeah.
taken away. The fear was taken away. Then the king was
Yeah.
delighted and gave an order to haul Daniel up from the den. So Daniel was hauled up out of the den. He had no injury of any kind because he had trusted in his God. He had trusted in his God.
And yeah, again, I just didn't remember the king rooting for Daniel. Is the way I'm going to phrase it. How he didn't really want to put him in there, but he was tricked into being forced to do it, and then he was overjoyed, when Daniel was okay. I found that interesting.
The king gave another order, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the lion's den. They, their children, and their wives. They did not even reach the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. And so then King Darius wrote to all the people and praise the God of Daniel. It said, he's a living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His authority is forever. He rescues and delivers and performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian.
Yeah.
So right now we have 4 kings that Daniel serves.
That was my last thing that I was going to mention. I did not realize that he went through so many kings in his story. Like how many kingdoms he was a part of. That's pretty crazy.
These were major kingdoms.
Yeah. Like I actually found it hard to kind of keep up with it and follow it while reading. I'd have to go back and be like, well, wait, no. What king was that? Are we on to a new king? And like that was eye-opening for me. And it did make the dream of the statue make a lot more sense too, and kind of how that flows.
It does. Yes. And it shows you that God thinks about nations. God thinks about government. God sets in action these things, and he desires that a government be prosperous and for the people, and that the leader have a heart toward God, because ultimately that's the only way that they will succeed. And so there was, in this story, I thought about a Proverbs, Proverb 26. The one who hates others disguises it with his lips, but he stores up deceit within him. And that made me think of the people that were maliciously planning for the downfall of Daniel. The one who hates others disguises it with his lips, but he stores up deceit within him. That we've got to be careful of flattering words, because the king fell right into that trap. He listened to them, and I believe he ultimately learned a great lesson. When he speaks graciously, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations within him. Though his hatred may be concealed by deceit, the evil will be uncovered in the assembly. The one who digs a pit will fall into it. The one who rolls a stone, it will come back on him. A lying tongue hates those crushed by it, and a flattering mouth works ruin. And that's Proverbs 26, 24 through 28. And when I was reading Daniel, I thought of this proverb. The very pit, the very thing that these people wanted to happen to Daniel was turned against them, and they fell into the trickery that they themselves conceived. Rich Mullins said, go out and live real good, and you'll get beat up real bad. And that's coming. In this world, we will have trouble. It's in that stability and trust in the Lord that you're able to withstand that, to the point that your heart is not full of pain or anger, so that your reaction to the trap becomes a lesson and becomes such a light to those around that they can now see why we go through these things. We see the reason behind going through and coming out on the
Daniel
other side.
really illustrates that to a T. I mean, his response when he is pulled up out of the den, King, may you live forever. There is no sense of hostility, anger, resentment. There's none of those things. I think this was good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to close in prayer. Lord, thank you that you are the creator of all things. And thank you that you have a plan. And thank you that you will work that plan. Thank you for including us and for giving us purpose and for making a way for us to receive salvation and to receive wisdom and knowledge and the gifts needed for our time on this earth. Lord, thank you for your examples of those who have gone before us. May we remember, and may the life that they lived continue to be a shining light to those that are living now. Lord, we ask that you touch the governments and the leaders in this world. This is not a small request. Lord, may they turn their hearts to you. May they be strengthened, and may they turn as Nebuchadnezzar did, and may they seek to fulfill your calling on their life. Lord, thank you for answering our prayers. Lord, thank you for touching the one who we requested prayer for. Continue to work in their life. Continue to touch those who listen. May it make a difference. May this podcast and the things that we talk about be an example to them and encourage them. And may they take away what is needed from your word. And may they be strengthened for the times that they are tested. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, once again, guys, we thank you so much for tuning in with us today. So we're continuing our study in Daniel. We hope you tune in next week as we wrap up our series or our study on Daniel with his remaining chapters. But until then, we hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.